Woohoo!
So this week we're going to jump back into ethics for a little bit. I think that's roughly where this applies. But it's bigger than that. And it's something that we touched upon loosely in one of our previous talks. And that's lying.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that there's something interesting to explore here.
Definitely.
There's definitely some deep stuff about lying in human beings.
Yeah.
So let's get into it a little bit. First question. How common do you think lying is?
Very common.
What do you mean by that?
I think that, like, little lies are things that people tell every day, all the time. And they do it just because it's a little bit easier to. It just doesn't make that much bigger of an impact. Like, as long as they don't feel like the lie is that big, it's really easy to lie about it.
Why do you think we lie?
Sometimes lying instead of telling the truth is easier because it helps us in some way. Like, it improves someone's opinion of us. It makes sure that you're not getting in trouble for anything. It's just sometimes lying can seem so easy and necessary because telling the truth can get really complicated.
I think that what you're saying is in some ways, we use it to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
We use it to control our environment.
Definitely.
Right? We use lying to get what we want. Most fundamentally.
Well, yeah.
Right? Do you think lying works?
A lot of the time, yeah. If you don't get caught in a lie, which is... Yeah, well, lying is complicated because a lot of times it works to make your life easier, but people don't like to think that they've been lied to. So if they figure out that you're lying, like if your lie gets too big or complicated, or you go back on yourself, or you forget about it, or it's information they already know, but you contradicted, then the lie can get revealed because it's really difficult to build an airtight lie unless it's really small. And people don't like thinking that they've been lied to. So a lot of times, if the person figures out that they have been lied to, then the consequences will be worse than if you just told the truth in the first place.
Well, for sure, if you figure it out. But I think your point is, in general, we get away with lying.
Yeah.
Especially about small things that no one else cares about. It's all in our own head, right? We're just lying about stuff that no one else would even care about.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the points and one of the reasons that we lie so much is it's effective. It works. Do you think lying's bad?
Depending on the context and how big of a lie it is, it can really go either way. If it's like just a small little lie and it's not going to affect anyone else negatively, then it's a perfectly fine lie. And a lot of times little white lies, like telling someone that you, I don't know, like enjoy a meal that you didn't enjoy, it can actually be good for them. It really depends on just like the situation and the people involved. If it's a really small lie and no one really cares about it besides you, no one's life is going to be impacted by it besides you, then there's not really, I don't think it can really be a bad thing. But it's generally when the lies get bigger and when they start like raveling and they start going into like this huge untrue story that you start telling to people, then that's when they get really hard because lying can hurt people.
Well, yeah, and essentially lying is getting an unfair advantage for yourself. Usually, right? It's kind of unethical in some level, right? You're kind of...
Well, yeah, on some level, because obviously people don't like being lied to. Like, they don't want you to lie to them. Or
Well, it's
it's
beyond them not wanting you to. You're literally creating a false reality for that other person to your advantage.
Yeah.
Right? Even on white lies, to some degree.
Oh, yeah.
I guess the point you're making then is there's an ethics to lying. Like, not all lies are the same.
No, definitely not.
Right? And so I think that I think most human beings feel that way and certainly act that way. I think we tell a lot of small little lies throughout the day, but, you know, most people kind of refrain from big lies.
Yeah.
Let's move on to something that's similar to lying, but I'm not sure if it's exactly the same. And that is how we as humans manipulate our actions and our persona depending on what situation we're in, depending on how we want to be perceived, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not the same guy at work necessarily, exactly, that I am when I'm sitting at, you know, a bar with my buddies.
Yes.
And I think that we kind of create these little personas throughout our day, and as contexts change, you know, to some degree, they're deceptive.
Yeah.
I'm hiding something about myself, or I'm trying to give a particular view of myself. Is that lying? Is it related to lying? Can you help me understand that?
Well, it's definitely deceptive in the way that lying is. And it is similar in a way, but lying is interesting because you're telling something false. You're communicating something false to somebody else, and then they'll believe that. But when you're just sort of altering your own self and how you act around other people, you're not really obscuring the truth. Like,
well, sometimes you are.
You are. Look, it's complicated because when you're acting differently, you're not telling a story that other people are believing. You're just sort of letting them come to their own conclusions about you. And
it seems like a bit of a fine line, though, right? So let me give you the example of this. I'm at the bar and I'm like, oh my God, I hate my boss. You know, and you go on and on and on, right? And then you show up Monday morning to work and you're like, oh, hey, Mr. Smith, how are you? Oh, I had an excellent weekend. How is that different than a lie?
I guess it's like sort of a lie of omission. Like, you're not really saying anything untrue, but you're not telling the truth either.
But you are misleading that person.
Yes,
I mean, it's not. I mean, I guess the question is there really that big of a distinction between misleading them through your actions and sort of your persona, as opposed to just saying something that's not true?
I think that they're definitely very similar things, and intentionally obscuring the truth from someone else isn't really different from a lie. But I don't think that putting on a persona for different people in your life is necessarily a bad thing. In the same way that lying is, it can be situational in terms of what you're actually doing, that persona, and whether that's going to impact anyone else's life negatively. But as a general rule, it doesn't really impact anyone's life negatively. There's obviously exceptions, and a lot of time, and it can. But just by acting a little bit differently around different people in your life, you aren't really impacting them in any way. And they're probably not going to find out about it. And so, lying and showing yourself differently into how you aren't really very different things. I don't think that acting in a different way is wrong in the same way that lying is.
Maybe they're both situational, right? Maybe there's some lies and some personas that are okay.
Yeah.
And there's some lies and some personas that are kind of go over the line.
But as a general rule, showing a persona is way more societally accepted than lying is. Because even though there are like these little lies that everyone sort of agrees in by themselves that are not harmful, if you go around and say, oh yeah, I lie to people, I'm a liar, people are going to form a negative opinion of you. But if you sort of admit to people, yeah, I act differently around other people, people will just be like, oh yeah, everyone does that, that's just a normal thing. So people are generally aware that you're not the same around everyone else. Well, even though they tell their own lies, they'll be a little bit more shocked and they'll feel worse about you saying that you lied to them.
So obviously they're related in that you're deceptive. They're both also related in that they're both about control, like controlling your environment, controlling people's perceptions, and ultimately getting what you want.
Yeah.
It's interesting how close they are, but society kind of has different views about them.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you lie?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I can form like an accurate estimate because I don't really keep track of how many lies I do. I don't think I lie that often as a rule, but yeah, I guess like a few times. Like I guess it's pretty common for me to just I don't know, like act a little bit nicer about something than my actual opinion is, or like I'll if someone asks me their opinion on something that they made, I wouldn't necessarily lie about it, and I think I'm generally kind of blunt when it comes to that stuff. But I won't just say, "Oh, I hate it so much."
Come on, let's not go there, right? Like that's not what we're talking about, right?
Okay.
Like you know, like these little lies that you tell for your not to protect someone or to be nice, but you know, the kind of lies you kind of to just get a little a little advantage. Do you know what I mean? Those are sort of like, you going to bed? Yeah, I'm going to, or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I guess like that's not that uncommon for me. Like I definitely do it like probably like a few times a week at least. But I think in general, I am like a pretty honest person, whether that's a good thing or not. Like sometimes it is a bad thing because people don't like what I tell them. But I think generally I don't lie that often, or I don't do like a few little lies a day.
So what about the other side? What about creating personas?
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's a little bit more your speed. You're a little bit more into that.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's pretty like I feel like everyone does that thing where they like just act even like just like slightly differently around different people in their life. And I'm not necessarily lying to anyone in my life about me. Like I don't think I'm putting on an entire show for anyone.
Yeah, right.
But I am sort of obscuring certain parts of myself for certain people and obscuring other parts of myself for other people. And then there's just like some parts of me that I just never really like show to anyone because like people probably wouldn't like them.
I think we all feel like we have those parts about ourselves that we don't share publicly.
Yeah.
Do you think that if you did share those parts, or if we did share those parts, that we all kind of like, these things that we're ashamed of or we keep secret, that anyone would really care?
Yes. Like I think for some things, if everyone sort of agreed on being open about them, I think for some things they would sort of fade into normalcy. But also people are very judgmental even about the things you do even about the things you do choose to show. Even if they personally have it themselves because they might be insecure about their own personal things. And then, of course, there are other parts of yourself that people will just find annoying or, like, uncomfortable to be around. Or, like, they just won't like that part of you. Completely separate from how society is perceiving, like, private parts of you. Well, what about you? Like, how often do you lie?
It's it's funny. I don't even know if I can answer that question. Quite honestly, I don't actively lie.
Yeah.
Really, very often. Like I'm not.
You don't consciously make the choice to lie.
Right, but I do feel like I unconsciously lie all the time on some level. Like I feel like like my brain is constantly calculating. How people perceive me, what answer I should get. And the algorithm isn't what's the truth.
Yeah.
It's how do I want this situation to go?
It just doesn't really factor the truth into it at all.
Well, it does. It does to some degree, like in a large degree. but it's not the only thing that gets factored in.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think in anything I do. And so for me, like, all that deception just feels like it kind of runs together a little bit, right? And so I don't know if I tell, like, big active lies or anything. Like, that's not really my thing. And quite honestly, you know, my personas are unusually consistent, right? This persona that I have right now, like, even though we're getting filmed and everything, like, I think you can pretty much tell this is just me, right? Like, this is kind of how I am all the time. This is how I am with, you know, at work. This is how I am with friends. And I'm doing this publicly.
Yeah.
Right? We're both doing this publicly. So I think that we're both, I'll just speak for myself. I feel like I in general don't have a ton of personas at this point in my life, but I do feel like there's still this filter.
Yeah.
That processes everything, that tries to calculate the results or the consequences of everything I say or do before it actually goes out.
Well, to a certain extent, that is sort of like a persona that you put on.
Yeah.
But just for everyone.
I think the distinction that I would make is, I think the person I am, you know, right now and in general with other people is the same person I am with myself.
Yeah. I can sort of relate to your whole, like, unconsciously lying thing, or, like, trying to manipulate the situation. I think, like, to a certain extent, I also do that. Just trying to be like, okay, well, how will people react if I say this, and how will people react if I say that? But I try not to lie, like, as a general rule, unless I actually think it's necessary. And I also don't think I show, well, it's complicated because for me, like, I feel like I show my general personality to everyone in my life, but I just, like, hide a few parts of that, and I sort of, like, dial it down or dial it up depending on the situation and the people involved.
How much brain power do you think it takes for us to constantly analyze other people's perceptions of us, to use that analysis to filter what we do or say or how we act or even lies, if it's going on constantly? Like, how much do you think that takes a lot of brain power?
Yes. Constantly trying to examine other people and what they think of you and how you should react to that and what you should say and what you should do, and, like, trying to, like, build that into a cohesive image of their person and their personality and how you should react to them. Like, I think that's exhausting. And I don't think that I really do that entirely. Like, I have my little thing where I try to figure out what's the right thing to say or do, and I act a little bit differently depending on the person and the personality and what I've perceived of their personality. But I don't have quite the active filter that you do. And I feel like if I tried to do that, then it would just be so difficult that with me already having, like, some social anxiety and, like, some troubles in social situations, and, like, it already being sort of draining for me to be around people a lot of the time, I would be, like, unable to interact that much.
I personally think that I have less of a filter than most people do, but I think I'm probably more aware of it than most people are. Why do you think we spend so much brain power and time trying to manage other people's perceptions of us?
Because we want them to like us. Like, because, like, us as people, as, like, humanity, we are social animals. Like, we have to interact with people. Even, like, me as, like, an introvert or whatever, who, like, I have, like, a social battery, I have to interact with people a certain amount, or else I'll feel just as bad as I would interacting with them too much. Like, we as people are social people that need to interact with others, and because we need to interact with others, we constantly want them to like us, like, to have a good opinion of us, to have a good perception of us, and to think of us highly, and to want to interact with us more. So, by constantly having that little worry in the mind, like, oh, what if they don't like this? What if they don't like this about me? And by knowing that parts of yourself wouldn't be likable to a lot of people or certain people or just all people in general, you automatically feel like you have to control yourself and position yourself in a certain way so that you can be perceived the best way that they'll perceive you. And then there's also, of course, like the parts of like manipulation and lying and like sort of making yourself look different so that you can get something that you want. But I think that the automatic filter that's running on everyone all the time is just the want of people liking you. We hope that you enjoyed that video, and if you did, please consider checking out the next one in the series.
Or some of our other series on philosophy and life.
We upload videos every Friday, so don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. See you next week.